as I said, which we were going to be doing the new side over there, so that should be turned off over there, which I'm pretty sure it is. So the same thing is everybody now over here on the other side where I'm making sure I'm just checking to make sure where we actually is turning that off. I just want to make sure this is turned off here where they cannot come through on any other side. So this is what I'm trying to make sure of right now and to make clear that this is not going through on the stream. So that's what I'm trying to make sure of right now to make sure the stream is actually completely turned off. So that's the one part that I'm checking on right now. And I can actually go in there and actually go in here to edit it. So that's what I'm saying. So if you haven't been over there yet, you need to go over there because over here we're getting ready to turn this one off to actually just be completely over there. So now we changing a couple of things over here to make sure, and just want to get these couple done, and to where we can make sure that give me one hot second. And I want to make sure this is, go to the control, and I want to make sure this is end right now to go through. So right now they're still trying to, so with that one there, we're going to make sure that this is actually undone. One second, let me make sure. To make sure this is turned off. And I want to make sure this is not turned back on to Vimo. And we're fine over on Vimo, but we're making sure everything is dead over here. So I'm just doing one more deal. To make sure that this is a dead deal over here. And this is I want to make sure this and I believe we have most of this down now. And I believe they're trying to hold that one. And let's see here. So we have this one. I'm just trying to make sure that it is completely dead from there. let me do this one. This is the easiest way to do it. So that one, it should be done to where I'm trying to make sure and delete it. And I want to make sure over this other one. Once we have that one, we should be pretty good. And get this other one done, and we should be good. Let me get this other one here. Here we go. And this one here. Yeah, I see they're trying to really hold it there, but that's what we actually taken out. And we're trying to get this other. And this here, we want to get the main part. And we should be pretty good. Trying to make sure. Trying to make sure. Good. So we're off stream over there. So now we're over here just on the other side. So now we're getting ready to get started in about 5 minutes, but I want to make sure the chat is on this side, and I'm enable the chat to where you guys can actually chat in here, because if I need a question, that might need to go up. So with that, we're gonna get ready to crank up, and we're gonna get ready to get started. So I'm changing a couple of things around to get everything going. So then after that, we're going to come back and we're going to go through, and then we're going to kick up and we're going to start going through Romans. So just letting people know over there to come over here. So now we can get ready to get cranked up, and now we can go ahead and go with it. So see you in a couple of minutes. Okay, so welcome back. Welcome back. So we're going to be going through Romans. We're going to pick up where we picked up from last week. We're going to pick up at verse 18. We're going to kind of look over a few things here on verse 17 to try to get the understanding to where once we start going through verse 18, we can really hone in on and find out exactly what Paul is talking about. So let's get ready to get cranked up. And I want to pull this in to where we can start finding out what's going on here. And we have this up here, which we looking at Romans. 1 second, I need to pull something over. 1 second. I need to pull one thing over. 1 second. Let me just get this. And just need to get this one part over. So yeah, now let me pull this back over. So let's look back at this and let's find out what's going on. Because in verse 17 from last week, it says, in the way of peace have they not known. So what is going on here is what he was talking about, some things that was going on to which he was building up to something. How do we know? Because if you go up to verse 16, it says destruction and misery are in their way. In the way of peace, they have not known. Why is the way of misery? They don't know. But even more so, let's go up a little bit to where we can get a full understanding of what Paul is talking about. Now, he even tells you in verse 15, in their feet are swift to shed blood, whose mouth is full of cursing and bitterness. Their throat is an open sepulchre. In their tongue they have deceit and poison of Alps, which is snakes, under their lips. All this, I'm talking about, he's just saying all this stuff about what's going on, and we need to clearly see how Paul is building up to something. He's building up to something, but he's talking about how we were acting and how we are being towards other people. And being mainly towards our own people. Meaning the same thing. Now we know in verse 18, and we're so caught up into idols, we're so caught up into anything other than God to where we don't fear God. And that's why he says, there is no fear of God before their eyes. There's no fear before God in their eyes. So what is he saying in the full thing of this? This is mainly just a quotation, but if they have no fear or no frightening of God, one, we need to understand a couple of things here. We need to understand a couple of things here. Meaning what? What is fear of God? See, most people don't know. What is the fear of God? Because if you ask the regular person, what is the fear of God, we can't mainly tell you what that is. And we have to understand what it's saying in the Bible all the time, because if not, people just say, well, you need to fear the Lord. Okay, so you ask them, how do fear work? How do fear work in the Bible? What is fear talking about? How do we fear the Lord? What is it? And if you don't know what it is, then people just saying, well, you need to fear the Lord thy God always. Okay, so what is that and how do that work? And this is why Paul tells you he speaks to them who know the law. That's why Paul even brought that up, because if people just sitting there and you come up to somebody and you just say, hey, you need to fear Joe, and they fearing for what? You don't even know why. He's just fearing. What? He's a bad guy. Okay, well, I think I'm a bad guy too. But it's telling you there is no fear of God before their eyes. And we don't know how it works. So we need to find out, how do this work? So we got to go to Scripture to find out exactly how it works, and even examples on who else might fear God. So we're going to look at a couple of things. We're going to go back and we're going to put the precepts in there to where we can always refer back to it, to where we know exactly what's going on. So we're going to look at an example. We're going to look at Genesis chapter 3, and we're going to start at verse 8. And as we get down to verse 8, it says, "And they heard the voice of the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day." They heard the voice of the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day. And it says, "And Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord God amongst the trees." Why? So let's see why it was going on. "And the Lord God called unto Adam and said, Where art thou? And he said, I heard thy voice walking in the garden, and I was afraid, because I was naked." He was naked. He hid himself because he was naked. He was in sin. So he hid himself. But he's telling you right up front, he was afraid. And all he heard was the voice. We'll see another example here to kind of round this all up. Let's go to Genesis chapter 22 and verse 12. And it says, "And he said, Lay not thy hand upon the lad, neither do thou anything unto him, for now I know that thou fearest God, seeing thou hast not withheld my son, thy only son, from me." How can we understand, if we want to understand the functioning on what fear is saying, and you have to fear your Lord thy God always? Because Abraham feared him. Adam and Eve feared him. But it's telling you here, there is no fear of God before their eyes. There is no fear. So why are we not fearing God? He's telling you all up there. You know, in the way of peace, they have not known peace. They don't know peace. So we have to understand how this all works, how everything plays out. Because if we don't know how fear works, then what's the point of us worrying about fear? Because if we don't fear God, then we have a problem. Because many don't fear God. Many is not going to fear God, and I don't care what level you put them on. Let's look at something. Let's go to Jeremiah, and this is why many people, they love to stay in the New Testament and to get understanding that they believe is understanding, and they literally don't even understand what they're reading, because the understanding comes from back here to where you can clearly understand what was happening. So in Jeremiah chapter 5 and verse 21, it says this. It says, "Hear now this, O foolish people." Foolish people, fools, foolish people without understanding, which have eyes and see not, and which have ears and hear not. Now, the only way you can hear something, you have to hear what? You're going to hear a voice. Did not Adam said he heard the voice of the Lord walking in the cool of the day in the garden? So why is it here? And we know if he's an invisible God, why is it right here? He's saying, foolish people without understanding, which have eyes and see not. You don't see what God has created, what's around you. However, even with that being said, we have ears not to even hear him. None. And he goes on more. He says, fear ye not me? No, we don't. Why? Because we are a rebellious type people. Saith the Lord, will ye not tremble at my presence, which I have placed the sand for the bound of the sea by the perpetual decree that it cannot pass it, and though the waves thereof toss themselves, yet they not prevail, through thy roar, yet they cannot pass over it. They cannot pass over the degree that he set there to where they can't go past. They can't go past that. No matter how much you can go out there and hear the beach roaring and everything else, making all this noise and doing all these things, it don't go past its degree, no matter what. So it making a lot of noise, but it knows its boundaries. It knows its boundaries unless he tells it otherwise. But he goes it and he's comparing it. It says, but this people. Now, the problem is this. If water, the much as water can destroy things upon this earth. Destroy, I'm talking about it can come in, you can see where it destroy cities and whole towns. You see this. So you know the strength of water. And it's telling you, and it won't go past its degree. It won't go past what it was told. So why is it but this people have a revolted and rebellious heart? They are revolted and gone. Can you explain this? Can we explain this to anyone? You can go out to the ocean and look at this water, and this water is doing everything other than what you think it's going to do, but it will not go past what it was already instructed not to go past. In water, by no means we can even compare our power to it. You know, it happened years ago, and before any of us was born, where they had the Titanic. And the guy had put in the paper, said even God can't sink it. Said even God can't sink this Titanic ship. But you got to remember, if they was in a plane and you look down upon the body of water, that plane don't even look like a pinhead if you high up enough. Don't even look like a pinhead sitting in the water. But we get so up into ourselves, we will think that we build something, can't nobody destroy it, not even God. And God had a little rock, a boulder that was sitting in the ocean. I believe it was an iceberg that's not tall, sunk that ship. Sunk that ship. Because we got so full of ourselves, we feel, well, I'll tell you what, can't nobody do anything. We done did the best thing and created. Now can't nobody do anything. Because we don't fear him. So since we don't fear him, we can create things ourselves, and now we can control it. Now we control this. But Yahushua even says this. And we're gonna go back. We're gonna put precepts. We're gonna put these precepts in here. But I need you to understand the functioning of fear. Matthew chapter 10, verse 28. Yahushua says this himself, and we see what happens. He says, "And fear not them which kill the body." You have people where flesh can kill other flesh. But we'll fear them and not fear God. They didn't create the heavens and the earth. They didn't put the degrees out there. They didn't tell the clouds when to come and to pour rain down. But we'll fear them and not fear God. But are not able to kill the soul. He's making this clear. They can destroy your body, but they can never destroy your soul. It's impossible. But there is one that can. He says, but, however, rather fear him which is able to destroy both. That's the one you need to fear, but we don't fear him. But that's the one we need to fear. He can destroy that, so that's one understanding on fear. This is one understanding on fear. Means what? He can destroy you, your body, and your soul. So even before we get further, let's just put this down in here to where we can understand fear. Let me put this in there. Fear God can the body and soul. So that's one thing we know. This is one thing now we know. So now we know, okay, we need to fear God because he can destroy the body and he can destroy the soul. See, he even repeats this, what we're going to look at. We're going to look at Luke. And we're going to go to chapter 12. We're going to pick it up at verse 5. He says, but I will forewarn you whom ye shall fear. So he's telling us ahead of time whom we shall fear. Because if we don't fear him now, when he started doing what he's doing and he started doing this thing, guess what? You're going to fear him, but it's going to be too late. Which, after he had killed, had power to cast into hell. And I say unto you, fear him. So we know fear him, which after he have killed the body, have power to cast into hell. So now he's saying he can cast your soul into hell. The body is just going back from the state from which it came. It's going back to dust. But your soul can go to hell. Are you following this? This is what he's talking about. Paul has taken some of these things to help us out. And even more so, let's look at something. Let's go to Psalms. Don't worry, we're going to put all this in there because there's quite a few precepts that's in here that we need to see. We're going to go to look at Psalms chapter 2, verse 11 and 12. It says, serve the Lord with fear. You're going to serve the Lord with fear and rejoice with trembling. Why? Kiss the Son. Kiss that servant. Why? Lest he be angry and ye perish from the way. Because if you, at least he be angry and ye perish from the way, when his wrath is kindled but a little. But a little. He's going to destroy not only the body, but he's going to destroy your soul. He's going to destroy your soul. Psalms 36, he makes it little bit other things, make it a little bit more clear. Psalm 36, verse 1. It says, the transgression of the wicked saith within my heart that there is no fear of God before his eyes. Why do we, and Paul is sitting here trying to explain this to us, and many of us sit there and they tell you, he just said, there's no fear before our eyes. There is no fear of God before their eyes. He's telling you the exact same thing. And there is no fear of God before his eyes. None. we will choose to do anything other than to fear God. Why? Because technically they say, well, I don't see him. So they don't fear God. And you see in other religions and different things, what they'll say is this. They'll say, the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom and all. Some of the most famous verses they like to use in their religion communities. In their religion community, this Christian community, all these different communities, they will do these things. And actually, we're going to go and we're going to even look at the verse. They even show you the verse they like to use. Why? Because we're going to look at this and we're going to get understanding for what they're doing to where we can remember what not to do. It says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Why? And the knowledge of the holy is understanding. So the knowledge of the separation is understanding. So in the knowledge of the separation is understanding. Is the beginning of wisdom. The holy is understanding of the knowledge. But why is he saying it in this way? To understand how it actually works. See, because the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Why? If you understand why that's the beginning of wisdom, what do we just know? What do we know? It's the beginning of wisdom. Why? Because the fear of God is the beginning with who can destroy the body and the soul. We know this. We just learned this. So when you want to understand how fear functions, when it's talking about we need to fear God, we know this clear. He can destroy the body and the soul. Man just can destroy the body. Satan have to have permission to do this one, but you will mess around and he get the chance to where he can help you do this one. God going to still destroy this one because you have wholly followed after the wrong thing. These are the differences we have to look at. So we have a better understanding why the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Wouldn't it be wise, saying, now, if I go over here and I do this, he can destroy my body. And he can destroy my soul. Now we understand how this is working. Let's look at it a little bit more. Let's look at some more. We're going to go to Proverbs chapter 1. We're going to go down to verse 7. It says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Really? It's the beginning of knowledge. But fools despise wisdom and instruction. Why? Because we think we can just get away with whatever we want to do. So this is why we have to hone in on why it's so important to understand how do fear of God works. Because many people are not going to fear God. We go down to chapter 2, and we're going to look at verse 5. It says, and then shalt thou understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. So once you fear the Lord, if you know the Lord with trembling, even when they was at the mountain, how they feared him. But many of us don't. Many of us don't. It goes down to verse 3 and 7. I'm talking about, it's all through here. Be not wise in thy own eyes. Why is he sitting there saying these same things? There is no fear of God before their eyes. They constantly telling you and mainly keep saying the same thing. fear the Lord, depart from evil. But we don't even know how it's actually even working. Let's look at it a little bit more. And don't worry, we're gonna put all these in the all these gonna go right in the precept area. But we're trying to understand, why is it like this, and we not seeing how everything functioned when we originally try to go through Scripture. And we're going to go down to Proverbs 15, and we're going to look at 33. It says, the fear of the Lord is the instruction of wisdom, and before honor is humility. Okay, now this giving us clear instructions or understanding on what it's actually saying. How? He said, the fear of the Lord is instruction. Meaning what? By voice. Because he can't sit there and give you hand signals. He can't sit there and give you anything else. He's going to give you instructions by his voice. That's why he says, obey my voice. Because he's going to give you instructions. With those instructions, you're going to get wisdom. You don't get instruction by what men telling you what to do. Men tell you, they'll tell you anything silly. But we have to look in here and see the instruction that he's giving you, going to get wisdom. How? Watch this. Let's go still in Proverbs. Watch what happens. Proverbs chapter 1, verse 2. It says, to know wisdom and instruct, going right back to this again. Going right back to instruction. And then it says, to perceive the words. Now, the words can't come out of hand signs. So we know it's his voice. We know it is his voice. These are the things we try to understand, but we don't act like we don't get it. So the word, same as his word, he said, what? Let there be light. You don't fear someone who can actually say, let there be light, and there is light? And you rather fear Tupu or Kiki? And you're not going to fear the one who created the heavens and the earth? But you're going to fear Lily. Do that make any sense? Do that make any sense? No, it don't. But he goes on more. And he says, perceive the words of understanding, to receive the instruction of wisdom. So the only receive the instructions of wisdom, it has to be either written or voicefully told to you. Are you following this? Justice and judgment and equity. He's making this clear. The understanding on what he's doing. He's saying what? Verse 4, to give subtlety to the simple. To the young man, knowledge and discretion. A wise man will hear. So he's telling you he has to say something. He has to say something, and will increase learning. So you're hearing this by voice, not by sight. And a man understanding shall attain unto wise counsel. So how is that being worked out? Attain to wise counsel, meaning many people will go through many different places, many different avenues, and many different areas, and they're going to seek what they call wise counsel. But the thing is, and your key is this, sometimes And many times, you're going to get counsel, which you're not going to like what's being told. So people will go to other counsel to get what kind of goes with their frame of thinking. And get counsel. But it goes on more. It says, to understand a proverb. So now we need to understand a proverb. And most people don't actually know what a proverb is. This is where we help out and make sure we understand what is being said. Understand the proverb and the interpretation. So not only understand the proverb, and the only way you understand the proverb, we need to understand the interpretation according to the scriptures on which it said. It said the words, the wise, the word of the wise. And now it's including something else, their dark sayings. We need to understand how all this is working out. This is the only way we can find out through here on this one little verse. There is no fear of God before their eyes. And most of us don't know what this fear is. That's what we need to understand. This is what we're trying to understand. And he's telling us right up front. He said to understand a proverb and the interpretation. So we need to understand the proverb that's being spoken, and we need to understand and be able to fully comprehend the understanding of it, the interpretation of it. And then it says the words of the wise and connecting their dark sayings. So we need to understand what a proverb and how that proverb actually works. Let's look at this. And just like I said, don't worry, we're going to go back in 1 second. We're going to put in all these precepts. But we want to understand what certain things mean to where we can clearly go through the Bible and we'll understand what's happening. So we're going to go down to Deuteronomy chapter 20. We're going to go down to verse 37. And we're going to understand something. So we want to understand the proverb. It says, "And thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword among all nations, whether the Lord shall lead thee." A proverb. So what is a proverb? A proverb is what we're getting ready to find out. See, a proverb, we're going to see a proverb. What is a proverb? Let's go up to verse 33. This is one proverb. It says, "The fruit of thy land in all thy labors shall a nation which thou knowest not eat up. Thou shalt be only oppressed and crushed always." So we always going to be this, oppressed and crushed. That's a proverb. Why? Because we see it's happening even today. Watch this. Verse 34. "So that thou shalt be mad for the sight of thy eyes, which thou shalt see." And you're going to see it. He's telling you something ahead of time before it's going to even happen. And it's happening. And the worst part is he told you ahead of time that this was going to happen. And we still went right into it, fully eyes open, and did it. This proverb. Watch this. Verse 32. It says, "Thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people, and thy eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all day long, and there shall be no might in thy hand." You can't even get them out of it. They'll sit there and tell a lie on them in the courts, and you can't get them out of it. And you'll know it's a lie. You'll know it's a clear lie, and you cannot get them out of it. Why? you are fulfilling this proverb. Let's look at even verse 30. Verse 30, it says the same thing. It says, thou shalt brothel a wife, and another man shall lie with her, and thou shalt build a house, and thou shalt not dwell therein. Thou shalt plant a vineyard, and shall not gather the grapes thereof. You can go back and see all kind of stuff. They even show movies where a slave had a wife, and the slave master would come and get her and tell the man, and she better act like she like it. Do you know how sick that is in the mind? And he's sitting there saying, she better act like she like it. Proverbs. Proverbs. These things he's telling you, this proverb was going to happen, and it's going to be an astonishment, and you see it even happening. And those dark sayings are parables. It's the parables we're going to see, even in this one, we're going to go to Psalms to even see some parables, some dark sayings. So we're going to go to Psalm 78. And we're going to start right here, verse 2. It says, I will open my mouth in a parable. I will open my mouth in a parable, and I will utter dark sayings of old. He will utter dark sayings of old. Meaning what? When it started coming to this time, and the same thing when it came into the New Testament, when it came into the Apocrypha and all that, he's telling you right now, he's going to utter parables. He's going to be uttering dark sayings of old, meaning dark sayings that's back in this time of the Old Testament. He's going to start saying these things, and we need to know what those things mean. We need to know what this stuff means. Meaning what? Here's one that's a famous one, but in majority of people, I done heard it said so many different ways, and none of them, I never heard it correctly. Never. Especially by any Christian pastor. It says this, in Psalms chapter 110, it says, the Lord said unto my Lord, sit thou at my right hand until I make thy enemies thy footstool. Now he said this here. He said this here. And we're going to even see, when he said this here, we're going to see a repeat of this same thing. We're going to see a repeat of this. Let's go to Matthew, and we're going to see the identical repeat. Matthew chapter 22. There's identical repeat. 22 and verse 43. Verse 43, we're going to see a repeat. And let's go up here. We're going to see, because Yahushua is going to actually say something to those Pharisees. It says, in 41, it says, and while the Pharisees were gathered together, Yahushua asked them, saying, what think ye of Christ? What ye think of Christ? Of Christ. Keep that in mind. What you think of Christ? Whose son is he? This goes over a lot of people's heads. And it says, they say unto him, the son of David. Do you see how stupid that is? You see how stupid that is? Who think thee of Christ? To show you how stupid it is, I'm going to show you something just to show you how stupid that is. It says, whose son is he? They say unto him, the son of David. But let me just show you something. And then we're going to come right back. We're going to go to Corinthians chapter 10. And we're going to see Paul just give us, he said, moreover, brother, I would not that you should be ignorant how that all our fathers were under the cloud and passed through the sea. And all were baptized unto Moses in the cloud and in the sea. Now, if they was all with Moses at this time, David not even nowhere closer on the scene. But watch what happened. And all did eat the same spiritual meat, and did drink all drank the same spiritual drink, for they drank of that spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ. So how is he David's son? How is that David's son? Now you see what the problem is? And I'm going to tell you, we get more and more people where they sit there and they're trying to tell you, and they get these Christian pastors, and they don't know the understanding of this. What think thee of Christ? Whose son is he? And some said unto him, the son of David. How is he the son of David? And I already showed you, if he's the son of David, it's a contradiction, because David have to be before Moses. So you know they don't know what he's talking about. The same as you go into these churches today. These dark sayings, these proverbs, but watch what happens. He said unto them, how then do David in spirit call him Lord? So how do he call him Lord? Saying, the Lord sitting next to my Lord, sit thou on my right hand till I make thy enemies thy footstool. If David then called him Lord, how is he his son? Do you see the silliness? And now this here, I guarantee, can't no Christian actually crack this. No Christian, I never seen, in all my years, I never seen a Christian, and they all address this. I never seen a Christian crack this. Never. And he said this, and this is normally what happened. And no man was able to answer him a word, neither durst any man from that day forth ask him any more questions. Why? Because they didn't understand this. So they said, we're going to leave this man alone. We're going to leave this man alone. And this happened a couple of times. You can see you're going to see it at different angles on what happened. We're going to go to Luke chapter 20. And we're going to see the same thing again in verse 41. Same thing. Same thing, same event, but just being spoken by someone else. And it says, and then a certain scribe answered and said, Master, thou hast said, well said. And after they durst not ask him any questions at all. And he said unto them, how say that Christ is David's son? See, this is what Yahushua want to find out. How are you guys saying Christ is David's son? This is pure silliness. And he said, and David himself said in the book of Psalms, even telling you where it is. We just seen it in Psalms 110. Lord said unto my Lord, sit thou on my right hand, till I make thy enemies thy footstool. David therefore calling him Lord, how is he then his son? But he went on more. He said, then the audience of all the people said unto him, unto his disciples. So this is why Yahushua said, beware of the scribes which desire to walk in long robes, and love greeting in markets, and in the higher seats in the synagogues, in the chief rooms at feasts. This is why it's saying, you have these preachers, you have these teachers who they want to be in these robes and all this just silliness, and they want to sit there and be high-minded and coming to you thinking that they're going to sit there and give you a word, and they can't even figure this out. And Yahushua is saying, beware of these people. So this is why the problem we have, many of us, is no matter what, we're going to still think of these people and be high-minded and think of them as these big people of respect. And they're going to destroy your flesh and choke your spirit. So then when you come before God, the spirit in the flesh is gone. This is the problem we all have. And the only reason I'm not giving the answer to this, because I know some Christians going to see this. And I already know they can't answer it. In the most simplest answer in the world. But a Christian, and what you do, when a Christian can't answer it, or they saying they know the answer. All you do is tell anyone who telling you don't know the answer, show you the answer in the Bible, and don't let them come out of just their mouth and tell you anything. Tell them to show you the answer in the Bible. And then you're going to see how dumb, how uneducated these men are, and many women of the Bible, that'll lose them for knowledge of the scriptures. See, they like to walk around, they want to talk different. They want to talk, and they drag their words to where they can sound different or sound more holy in their realms. So these are things you have to watch and you have to understand. So let's put these precepts in there, because we got some precepts we got to put in here now. So let's go through here, and we have a lot of precepts we got to do. We got Genesis. We got Genesis chapter 3, 8 through 10. I'm going to hit that. 22, 12. Excuse me. We have Jeremiah 5, 21 through 23. We have Psalms 2, 11 through 12. We have, we got fear here. Well, we can put him up here. We have Matthew 10, 28. We have Luke. We have 12, 5. We have Psalms 36, verse 1. Okay, now we got to go back down here and get those. And now we got to put in the rest of these here. So we have those up to that one. And I want to put in, we got 1028. Yeah, we got those. And we need Proverbs. We got 1, 7, 2, 5. And we have 3, 7. We have 15, 33. We have some, actually, we have instructions. We have instructions. And now we have 1533. So I'm going to move this one from here. And we got to put this here. We're going to put in Proverbs 15:33, 1, 2 through 6. And we're going to put examples. And we're going to be going back and forth on some of these, so don't worry about it. And we got examples. We got Deuteronomy 28, 37. And we're going to go backwards, 33 and 34. 33, 34, 32, and we have 30. We have Psalms 78 and 2. And these are some of the dark sayings in the parables. And 2, we have 110, 1. We have Matthew 22, 43 through 45. We have Luke 20, 41 through 43. Make sure you save this. And just as I just did, save it. Make sure you save it. Now, we know within this, we know the Bible represents fully to understand spiritual things. We know that. Still, same thing, still dealing with this verse. Still dealing with this verse. Why? Because we know in Psalms 36 verse 1, we have to have a pure heart and a pure wickedness of the heart and no fear of God and no fear of judgment, which is fear of dying, which is the second death. Meaning the same thing what he was saying here. When we go to Psalms chapter 36, it's in this is when you do your studies to where these should be happening all day long. 36. And we're going to look at verse 1. It says, the transgression of the wicked saith within my heart. That's where it's coming from, within your heart. There is no fear of God before his eyes. So the Bible represents a fully understanding spiritual things. So it makes sense that the eyes should allow us to see, which represent the intellect, which will become our understanding of spiritual things. Which will become our understanding of spiritual things. This is what happens here. This is why we have to remember what's going on. So, how do all this end up working out? That's why we have so much, even with this from here, in verse 18, and why we're going into verse 19. What is he saying here? What is he saying right here? It says, now we know that what things soever the law saith. Okay, so we trying to figure out, why is it saying there? It's saying now we know that what things soever the law saith. Are you following that? Are we catching this? Because he's saying something serious there. But I'm going to read it out, and then we got to go back and we got to visit that because he's saying something real serious there. It says, it saith to them who are under the law, telling you even more, that every mouth may be stopped and all the world may become guilty before God. Now, here's the problem, why this is a problem. Now we know that. Now we know. We know. That's the problem. We know. See, Paul stopped saying some things which he was speaking on in order to comment there. He stopped speaking on stuff to literally show you know something. Now we know. Speaking in order of comment based on something to where he can sit there and say the same thing like, I know you know that. So now he can be saying that. Or don't you know that? So he's saying, we know. Saying whatsoever the law saith is said to them who is under the law. He set us up for something we wasn't even expecting. Meaning what? One, the term law. The term law. Many people are going to tell you Torah. Torah is Yiddish. Torah has nothing to do with the Bible. Don't let people fool you in going into all this silly stuff. They're going to take you on a whole long way and telling you you need to be doing Torah, and they bunch of silliness. So the law is a term used. The law is a term used. It's set up to understand a couple of things. The law is to understand the statute. The law is to understand the judgment. The law is to understand the decisions that is made from the commandments of his voice, which is within the covenant of God. The law of instructions. Are you following? That's all he's saying. In a whole nutshell, this is what he's talking about. The term law the term law is set up for us to understand the statute. The law is set up to understand the judgment from that statute. The law is set up to show us the decision of the statute in the judgment that comes from that decision. The law is set up for us to understand the judgment, the statute, and the decision from the commandment, which is in the covenant of God said within the instructions on what we need to be doing. And if we don't do them, it's a decision that's already made, which is going to come back on us based on the judgment on what he already said within the covenant. And the statute is already there, and the decision is already there made for you before it even happens. Are we following this? Are we following what's going on here? Now, we have to understand another part. The law was not made for everyone. The law was not made for we know things whatsoever the law saith. So now we know it. Now we know it. So what is the law? We have to understand how Paul is laying this out carefully in the scriptures. Meaning this. Let's go to 1 Timothy. 1 Timothy. To pull some information there. 1 Timothy chapter 1, verse 9. And it tell you this. Now, let's look at verse 8. But then we're gonna put some precepts there. But it says, but we know, again, he goes back to this is where it can be frustrating many times, because we know. This is the same person saying this over here. But we know. He's saying the identical thing. But we know that the law is good. The law is good if a man use it lawfully. The law is good if we use it lawfully. But guess what? It's not, well, let's look at it. Knowing this, we know, knowing this, that the law is not made for a righteous man. Can someone answer that? Can anyone answer this issue right here? He said, okay, now we having everybody across all platforms, they telling you, do Torah, do the law, do this, do that. The law said this, do that. The law said that, do this. The law said you got to do that, do this. Knowing this, the law is not made for a righteous man. It's clear as day. But for the lawless and disobedient. So you have to put off that sinful man. You have to put off that sinful flesh. You have to stop doing the works of the flesh. When we do the works of the flesh, you are doing the works of a lawless and disobedient servant. I don't care how you look at it. You have people who will sit there, well, I like doing this every week. I like doing this for them. People doing this. I like doing this because this is here, and I'm doing this because the book said to do this. The Bible said to do this. Is that works of the flesh? So for the ungodly and for sinners, for unholy and profane, murderers of fathers and murderers of mothers, for manslayers, for whoremongers, and for them that defile themselves with mankind, for man-stealers, for liars, for perjured persons, and if there be any other thing that is contrary to sound doctrine. Well, I like to feed the homeless every weekend. Being lawless, disobedient, ungodly sinner. I can tell you a lot of reasons even why it's going to come up that way every time. He's telling you something spiritual and we doing it physically, not understanding what he actually said. Because many times he had to feed them food to where they can hear him. So he had to satisfy the flesh to where he can pump in the doctrine he needed in them for them to actually hear him. But we'll sit there and want to feed people and thinking that they're not going to want to hear anything you got to say, and all you're going to do is finish once you feeding them, you're going to say, God bless you. This is what we do. Let's look at something. Let's look at it a little bit more. Let's look at something. We're going to go to Sirach. We're going to look at Sirach. We're going to go to chapter 41 and verse 8. Chapter 41 and verse 8, it says, Woe be unto you, ungodly men, which have forsaken the law of the Most High God. For if ye increase, it shall be to your destruction. See, this is one of our biggest problems we have, because we constantly would like to judge and judge things on what we do for people, and we try to sit there and say we're going to do this and we're going to do this for them, and I want to feed this and I want to feed that, and he want to get out a message. The Most High God is trying to get a message out, but we have people trying to get out plates. We have people trying to get out money. We have people trying to get out all these things and not doing the works of God. We're doing them according to the flesh. And the law is not made for a righteous man. See, the law even gives you knowledge of sin. Let's go a little bit more. We're gonna come back and we're gonna put the precepts in there. But let's go in here, and we got to look at this. And this is why it's so dangerous. And have so many people, they think they'll go through Genesis, and then they'll feel that they are the foremost expert in going through the doctrine of the Bible. In Genesis chapter 2, verse 9, it says, and out of the ground, the Lord God made the Lord God to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food. And the tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. The tree of knowledge of good and evil. So we have the tree of knowledge of sin. Because this tree of knowledge of good and evil has the knowledge of sin. Let's go down to verse 19 and get a little bit more information. It says, and out of the ground the Lord God formed every beast of the field and every fowl of the air, and brought them unto Adam. What should he call them? Whatsoever Adam called every living creature that was made thereof. Most of this just flew over a bunch of people's heads. See, he gave them the knowledge already. So understand what God did. Out of the ground, God formed every beast of the field and every fowl of the air and brought them to who? He brought them to Adam. To see what he called them. We just seen he showed you where everything was coming from. God is bringing these to Adam. But I still know this is going over people's heads. This is the problem that we have today. To go deeper into this, into where we can put these into proper perspective and what we're trying to achieve, is this. In Romans chapter 4, which we're going to end up going into in a little while, 4 and 15, it says, because the law worketh wrath. It worketh wrath. For where no law is, there is no transgression. There is no sin. So this is what we try to do. Even in verse 5:13, he tells you, for until the law, sin was in the world, but sin is not imputed when there is no law. So most people want to live by what they believe and what they hear. So what Paul talking about? Let's look back at it. Make sure we're not getting off track. For we know. We know that things whatsoever the law saith, it said to them who are under the law. We're shady. Just shady people. Why? We don't even obey the voice of God. We're shady. We're shady as it comes, but then we want to sit there and we want to think that we're righteous. And we're shady. And this is what we do know. See, the same thing I said, it goes back to the voice. It goes back to the voice. We can't get around that. See, in James chapter 2 and verse 23, even our forefather Abraham, 2:23, it tells us, in the scriptures was fulfilled, these letters, these words, these things that you see on paper, spiritually was fulfilled, which saith, Abraham believed God, and it was imputed to him for righteousness, for he was called a friend of God. We'll sit there and say that we're a friend of God and not do this. See, he tells you this, where it goes all the way back. Where? Back right to Genesis chapter 15. He's saying the same thing in 15 verse 6. And he believed in the Lord, and he counted it to him for righteousness. But what we want to do, we believe men. But we know. We'll go, and many of us will sit in the church and sit there, oh yeah, he's this, he's that, I don't believe everything, man. But you'll sit there and you're gonna at one point in time, you're gonna believe him. The reason how that is so true, because no matter what, you putting in all your effort and all your very being into going into a location which you know is not teaching you the truth. You'll get dressed. You'll spend your gas money. You got a little few dollars you're going to put into the offering plate. You're going to fellowship with unholy people. These are the things that we're going to go through. And we're not going to think nothing about it. Let's get this in here. 1 Timothy 1:9. We have Sirach 1:9. I'm sorry. We have Sirach 41:9. I don't know why I did that. 41:8. I'm sorry. 41:8. And we have Genesis 2:9 and 19. We have Romans 4:15, 5:13, James 2:23, and you can also reference that one with Genesis 15:6. Save it, make sure you save it. So we're going to cut it right there, and we'll pick up from there. But what I want to do is see, do we have any questions thus far to where we can address if we have any, and go through it. So that's what I want to check right now, and make sure we don't have none there. So if we do, we can address them right now. But that is the filler part and what we need to be doing here. So right now I'm not seeing any questions that's coming up. So, and I do know that some people said that for some reason they can't chat over there, but I know that chat feature is there for you. And on what we're going to do on the King James Bible University side, I can physically put in the chat in there. So I'm going to do that to where a lot of you guys can actually go over there and actually end up watching it. And it says, what was the last precept that was given? Was Genesis chapter 15, verse 6. The last one, well, the last two was James 2:23 and Genesis 15:6. Again, the last two was James 2:23 and Genesis 15, verse 6. Those are the last two that was given. And we have any other questions? Any other questions? So those are the ones that we're trying to make sure of. Any other questions? Because I would say, okay, we have, okay, thank you, you're more than welcome. So any other thing, because when we go through and we're looking at Paul, the biggest thing is you'll see a lot of leaders, they like to call themselves, they're going to dissect Paul, but they doing Paul more so anything to see how they can push themselves into a more leadership or powerful position to where you'll be more subservient, to where you will do their will and not the will of God. They'll sit there and tell you to sell dinners and you're doing the will of God, but you're actually doing the will that he needs to fulfill his pockets. Technically what happens. So do we have any other questions? Any other questions? Other than that, we'll get ready, we can go out. Any other questions? So hopefully we went through and we got a lot of information there. And we'll pick this up and we'll go through and take care of a lot of it. And I do know tomorrow we're going through written communications, which a lot of you guys are going to receive your links actually tonight for the other section of it. We do have some new people that is on board to where everybody's going to get the link together to where, you will get the access in there. And once you get the access to come into the class, we're asking you guys not to click on it until the time of class. Some people clicking on it, going in there and just hanging out, and literally it kind of causes a little bit of confusion on our end when you do that. But the thing we're asking is, you can wait till tomorrow because the link actually will work, but we just want you to wait until tomorrow to do it. If you get the link and you know you're in the class, and if you don't see the link in your email box, make sure that you check your spam mail or your junk mail and make sure it's there. If not, it's there, send me an email, let me know to where we can take care of it from there. and we go from there. So we want to make sure that is clear. And other than that, it looks like we are good. So what we're going to do, we're going to cut it here, and we're going to get this started for tomorrow. So right now, everything else is we're good on. So until tomorrow, I say to each and every person, I'm glad that you were able to join us today to go through this with where we went through these 2 verses. But make sure you study it, make sure you go through it to where you can clearly understand it. So until this time, until tomorrow, I say to each and every person, hey, shalom.